As soon as you turn 16, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna let you rock this every time you come to LA. Yeah, it's gonna be yours. So, and when you get 18, you get the house. You get the mansion.
Okay, I get the mansion?
Yeah.
So where are we off to now?
Where would you like to go?
Absolutely gonna testify. I won't even say his name. He is an evil being, and it's going to pay.
I think that I was just, living in this shame, living in all this sort of stuff of my past, and I wasn't able to move on. It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time.
Welcome to new viral drama, where Hollywood secrets don't drip. They explode straight into your screen. They won't even give me a permit for the parties, man. They don't want me to throw the parties no more. But we ain't stopping. We still gonna have fun, still bring people together. You heard about my party? They're gonna shut it down. They'll probably arrest me before the music even drops. Viewer discretion is a must. This ain't your average gossip. What you're about to hear is raw, real, and straight from the courtroom. The following segment is based entirely on federal trial coverage from day 5 of Sean Diddy Combs' explosive legal battle, all reported live by Inner City Press. And let's just say, day 5 came out swinging. Not because of what was said in court, but because the internet blew up before the hearing even started. Out of nowhere, Justin Bieber, once the teen prodigy Diddy helped push into superstardom, finally spoke up. And what he dropped online wasn't just support for Cassie. It felt like a bombshell that cracked the foundation of the whole trial. Bieber's words lined up with Cassie's testimony, and even worse for Diddy, they echoed years of whispers, old footage, and hella uncomfortable moments that the music biz tried hard to bury.
Wow! I feel violated right now. Wow.
Lean into me again. You smell amazing. How old are you?
Thank you.
How old are you?
I'm 16. I'll be 17 in like 2 weeks.
I don't ever remember smelling that good at 16. Like that was bad.
Yeah.
Wow, look at your eyes. Look at what a beautiful...
Bieber turned 15, and it suddenly seemed that Hollywood was keen to almost...
Courtroom reporters saw it first on their phones. Then came the gasps. Bieber's post was on every screen. Every whisper turned to stares. And when Diddy caught a glimpse, boom, he snapped. Full-on emotional collapse. Security had to jump in quick as the entire courtroom went dead quiet. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. It wasn't just an outburst, it was a collapse. The man who once bragged about building Bieber's career, now crumbling in front of the very industry he used to control. Flashback to 2009, Bieber was the face of innocence. Just 15, fresh out of Ontario, co-signed by Usher and managed by Scooter Braun. Diddy took him under his wing. But what really went down behind closed doors? That's the question everybody's asking now. Justin Bieber's debut track One Time wasn't just a hit, it blew up. Practically overnight, he went from a small-town Canadian kid to a global heartthrob. Clean-cut, baby-faced, and adored by millions, he looked like every parent's dream. But behind that sweet image, the machine behind his rise was full of grown men running game from deep inside the industry shadows. And front and center in that circle, Sean Diddy Combs. Diddy didn't just meet Bieber, he claimed him, took him under his wing like a protege, brought him to industry parties, and called himself Bieber's mentor. In one now creepy clip, Diddy jokes during an interview that he had custody of Justin for 48 hours. Folks laughed back then. But now, that clip gives people chills. That wasn't just a passing comment, it was the start of something way more complicated. Footage from those days shows Bieber, young and wide-eyed, standing stiffly next to Diddy, clearly unsure of how to carry himself. And while Justin stayed quiet, Diddy talks for him, cracking wild jokes and pulling the kid into rooms he probably had no business being in.
Initiate him, I think that's the right word. Like there was almost like this initiation that he needed to go through. So I want you to be now super uncomfortable and watch this video of an interaction between him and none other than Diddy. Take a listen.
Justin, he's in, you ever seen the movie For the Times of Their Lives, where we hanging out and what we doing, we can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. I have been given custody of him. You know, he signed to Usher.
In one particular video, Bieber nervously cracks a joke about girls, and Diddy claps back, "My man." It looked playful in the moment. Now it's being replayed in a very different light. This wasn't just a celeb hanging with a rising star. This was a full power play. Diddy wasn't just famous, he was powerful. Getting his stamp meant doors flew open, but it also meant Justin was exposed. To what though? Being linked to Diddy meant clout, connections, and protection. But it also meant stepping into a world full of blurred lines, wild temptations, and a man whose power often went unchecked. Back then, Justin Bieber couldn't stop praising Diddy in interviews. He called him an inspiration, someone who believed in him before the world knew his name. The media ate it up, but what nobody saw was the real world behind those words. The late-night convos, the off-camera moments, and the unrecorded nights that painted a way different picture.
I'm signed to Usher.
I had legal guardianship of Usher when you know he did his first album. I did Usher's first album. I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So and we gonna go full.
Young Justin Bieber, who was signed by Usher, involved with Scooter Braun, now all of a sudden he's being put in the hands of Diddy, who, it is true, he became the legal guardian for Usher. You can look up all of the allegations of what Diddy did. The allegations are essentially that Diddy very much initiated.
Behind the scenes, a teenage Bieber was being shaped by a man whose lifestyle had nothing to do with childhood and everything to do with excess, control, and adult-only access. On the surface, it all looked golden. Diddy mentoring the next pop prince seemed like a win, but now that same mentorship is getting re-examined, and what once looked like guidance is starting to look like something way darker. Because in the entertainment world, mentorship can come with a price, sometimes with strings and sometimes with shackles. Bieber's early connection to Diddy used to be something people bragged about. Now, it's got folks raising their eyebrows, wondering what really went down. As Bieber's fame exploded in the early 2000s and 10s, he wasn't just becoming a teen idol, he was gaining access to rooms most kids his age had no business being in. He was still practically fresh out of middle school, and yet he was being ushered into a world ruled by power, manipulation, and adult games. Sure, Scooter Braun and Usher were front and center as his official team, but Diddy, he was the silent force in the background, hosting, guiding, bringing Bieber into VIP spaces where image and dominance were everything. There are photos, clips, and stories of Justin barely old enough to drive, posted up next to Diddy at exclusive events with industry giants double, even triple his age. Private parties, elite clubs, Hollywood gatherings, all places where teens don't belong. But Diddy, with his charm and reach, he opened those doors like it was nothing. The power imbalance between Diddy and Bieber wasn't just about age, it was about influence. Diddy had the keys to every door in the industry. He could get Justin into any room, introduce him to the biggest names, and control how the public saw him.
Usher, as we are going through these lawsuits and Diddy is in prison, we are recognizing that everybody knew. This was an open secret about what Diddy was doing. So it just begs the question, who allowed Justin Bieber to be in the presence of this man, knowing what he was up to, allegedly up to? That seems to be very clear.
But that access came with a price. Bieber had to play the game, smile for the cameras, show loyalty, and quietly adapt to a world filled with twisted rules and hidden agendas. What was labeled mentorship started to feel more like control. It wasn't about teaching, it was about owning the moment. And Bieber, he was just a teen trying to keep up in a game rigged by adults. People close to Bieber would later admit the pressure was nonstop. He was always overwhelmed, stuck between skyrocketing fame and the weight of powerful expectations. Sure, Diddy's cosign gave him a boost, but it also dragged him straight into the darkest corners of the entertainment industry. We're talking addiction, manipulation, and moral boundaries that barely existed. The mental toll. It hit hard and fast. Justin's behavior shifted. He started spiraling, arrests, fights with paparazzi, public meltdowns. At the time, the media called it acting out, but looking back, it was a cry for help. Being 15 and called a global icon, while being handed a drink at one of Diddy's wild parties, that's not a rite of passage. That's reckless. That's what happens when a kid is treated like an industry product before he's even lived life. Now let's be clear.
Do you think the person that the you of then was on a path of self-destruction?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would have, for sure, 100%. Yeah. It would have been no bueno. It was bad. I don't know if I'd be alive for sure. It was dark. So I'm very, very grateful to have influences in my life that have played a huge part in me seeing their relationship with Jesus and their relationship with their wives and their relationship with their kids and saying that's what I want. But I want to definitely tell my story so that if that resonates to anybody, that they can hopefully. But yeah, just protecting those moments because people take for granted encounters and
Diddy was never accused of directly harming Bieber, but bringing a teenage boy into grown-up chaos like that leaves a mark. Exposure to those kinds of environments doesn't go away. It lingers. And the silence? That says everything. While other young stars eventually broke their silence about abuse and control, Bieber stayed quiet. But that silence speaks volumes. Bieber didn't say a word for years. No call-outs, no shade, not a single pushback against Diddy until day 5 of the trial. That's when the so-called mentorship finally flipped into something else, regret that hit like a truck. The internet, it never sleeps, and it never forgets. The second Diddy's name was splashed across headlines with scandal after scandal, social media detectives went digging. And what they unearthed? A clip that had been sitting quietly for years, hiding in plain sight. The video shows a teenage Justin Bieber and Diddy, both laughing, both smiling. Just another behind-the-scenes moment between a megastar and his young protege, right? Wrong. Watch it now. And it hits completely different. In the clip, Diddy smirks and says, "I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me."
yeah. So yeah. I just want to protect her, you know? I don't want her to lose it. I don't want her to, you know, go through anything I went through. I don't wish that upon anybody. So, yeah, if she ever needs me, just think about how young I was and so impressionable. And you have everybody telling me how awesome I am at all times, you know, and like.
It's like taking a kid and putting a kid in a room full of nothing but sweets.
Right.
And just saying, I'll be back in 2 days.
Exactly. I just want people to understand, like, the psychology behind why I potentially could have problems in my life. So.
Meantime, let's talk about the fact that Combs' co-defendant in a civil case, a case, by the way, that accuses him and this co-defendant, another A-lister, of rape. This guy is once again slamming the attorney behind the case, insisting that he be sanctioned for allegedly not doing his job. We're talking, of course, about Sean Carter, better known as Jay-Z, once again calling out attorney Tony Busby, calling out his character, more specifically into question, claiming that the Texas attorney's filings have, quote, substantial. Now, we've talked about this before, but basically, a civil lawsuit was filed against Sean Combs on behalf of a Jane Doe who says that she was raped by Combs and another celebrity at a home after the Video Music Awards in 2000.
Then he gives Justin a pat on the back. Bieber forces a smile, nods awkwardly. Back then, everyone laughed. It got brushed off as Diddy being Diddy. But now, that same clip feels like a giant red flag we all missed. The vibe, off is the body language, uncomfortable. The tone, straight up disturbing. It's not even a long video. Barely a few minutes. But the way Diddy talks, it's not playful, it's possessive. And Bieber, he looks like a kid who doesn't know where he belongs. Once it hit TikTok, Twitter, and Reddit, it blew up. Viewers flooded the comments saying things like, "Why didn't anyone speak up back then?" And "This feels wrong now." That's the thing. Context is everything. And when you're watching that moment through the lens of today's sex trafficking allegations circling Diddy, that harmless video feels like a warning sign that got completely ignored. What once looked like a wholesome celeb mentorship now feels like a twisted power play, and the world watched it unfold right on national TV. Sources close to Bieber say the resurfacing of that old Diddy video wrecked him. It shook up feelings he thought he buried. It made him question everything, like whether that uneasy feeling he had back then was real, and whether he was just too young, too scared to say anything. That clip didn't just stir up the past, it forced Bieber to face it head on. Staying silent, that was no longer an option.
And weeks after the initial filing, Busby submitted an amended complaint naming Jay-Z as the celebrity who allegedly participated. They wanted copies of these videos for themselves. And I've talked to lawyers about this before. There's a big advantage to having the electronic video, the electronic evidence yourself, right? You don't have to always go over to the other office. You can view the materials on your own. It's a way to better prepare for your defense.
Behind the scenes, Justin started crafting a response. Not rushed, not reactionary. This wasn't just about Cassie's testimony anymore. It was about him reclaiming his own truth. The man he once admired, the one who seemed to guide his career, that image had shattered. And now he had to ask himself, did that man ever deserve his trust in the first place? And when Bieber finally spoke up and hit post, the whole world froze, including Diddy. By his mid-20s, Bieber had already been through hell and back. He'd lived the fantasy and then watched it crumble, a full-blown crash course in fame. The same teen who once stood beside music moguls in designer suits and flashing cameras. He was now a grown man, one who finally saw the truth behind the glitter. Between 2014 and 2016, his life turned into tabloid chaos. Arrests, vandalism, confrontations, tour cancellations. He was spiraling in front of millions. That perfect image? Gone. In later interviews, Bieber confessed that lifestyle nearly ended him. I would have been dead by now if I kept going, he said. That's not drama, that's raw survival. Now, the silence is broken, and Justin Bieber's not just reflecting, he's reclaiming his story. When Justin sat down with Zane Lowe, his voice was steady, but his eyes said everything. Calm on the outside, but clearly wrestling with everything that had built up over the years. But the real shift in Bieber's life didn't come from a song or a chart-topping comeback. It came from marriage. In 2018, Justin married model Hailey Baldwin. And that wasn't just a relationship, it was a full-on rebirth.
And Sean Combs' lawyers argued that under the federal rules of criminal procedure, electronic data that is in the government's possession, Judge Subramanian denied the defense's motion to amend the protective order, but without prejudice, meaning this issue could be revisited.
Through her and his deepening Christian faith, Justin started peeling back the layers of trauma he'd carried since his teenage years. He got clean, he started therapy, and slowly he began speaking, not loudly and never with names, but with purpose. He didn't call out Diddy directly, but the message was there, loud and clear. They told me they loved me, then turned their back on me in a second, he said. He spoke about being just 15, surrounded by grown adults who didn't see a kid. They saw a cash cow, an opportunity, not a human being. And from that moment on, Justin made some serious changes. No more clubs, no more late-night Hollywood scenes. He started cutting those old ties, and instead of chasing the spotlight, he turned inward. His music began to shift too. Tracks like Lonely and Ghost weren't just songs, they were confessions. You could feel the scars, even if you didn't know where they came from. But even as he rebuilt himself, not every tie was severed. In 2023, Bieber surprised fans by hopping on Diddy's Love album Off the Grid. To the outside world, it looked like a comeback moment, mentor and protege back in the booth. But according to insiders, that move haunted Bieber. Word is he regretted the collab almost immediately, because by then he knew better, and being linked to that past again wasn't part of the man he was trying to become. Sources close to Bieber say he had no clue how deep the allegations against Diddy really went when he agreed to work on that collab. He thought it was business as usual.
Old, and I should mention he was signed by Usher to a label that was owned jointly by both Scooter Braun and Usher, and he was considered Usher's protege. He has been described Usher as his mentor. The Bieber, Justin Bieber, is continuing the purge. He has now moved to his original mentor. So this is a very big story, and the reason why we should discuss this and we should not diminish what is happening, it's not celebrity drama. This is actually the fall of Babylon that we are witnessing, Hollywood Babylon, that is. He did an interview back in 2020 with Zane Lowe. I think this was on Apple Music. And he was speaking about another young artist that was coming up, Billie Eilish, and Eilish. And he was basically speaking about how he wanted to protect her because she was now another young person, a rising artist in the industry. And sort of out of nowhere, he became quite overcome with emotion. Take a listen.
Yeah, I definitely feel protective of her. It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn. And everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second. So yeah, it's hard because I want her to know that, she can count on me. But at the end of the day, I'm never gonna force myself to be in a relationship with her. It has to be natural, right? So I just kind of, let her do her thing. And if she ever needs me, I'm gonna be here for her. But yeah, just protecting those moments because people take for granted.
I'm not even kidding. Watching that clip makes me emotional because he is saying so much without really saying anything. Protect Billie Eilish from what? From who?
But when the lawsuits dropped and the federal raids hit the headlines, Bieber shut all the way down. He was angry, confused, hurt, said one associate. He didn't know what to believe. That's why what happened on day 5 shook everybody, because Justin had stayed silent for years, kept his head down, stayed out of the drama. But that morning, everything changed. Just minutes before the courtroom doors opened, Bieber did what no one expected. He broke his silence. And when he did, it flipped the entire trial's energy upside down. At exactly 8:12 a.m., Justin posted to his 270 million followers on Instagram, and it hit like an earthquake. The caption wasn't long, just a few lines, but it came with a black and white throwback pic of him and Cassie at a music event years ago. And the message cut deep. Cassie, I see you. I remember what I saw, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they love me and, just turn their back on you in a second. So if she ever needs me, I'm gonna be here for her. But yeah, just protecting those moments because people take for granted.
Boom, that was it. In seconds, it went viral. News outlets jumped on it. Fans filled the comments. Celebs started reacting, some with words, others with complete silence. But inside that courtroom, the effect was instant. Diddy walked in with his usual cool until his lawyer snatched the phone right out of his hand. Why? Because Diddy kept refreshing his feed. And then he saw it, and his face gave it all away. And just when people thought the post was over, Bieber took it one step further. He detailed something that nobody expected. He said he saw Diddy grab Cassie's arm way too hard at a 2015 after party. He remembered how Diddy used to cut her off in interviews, answering for her, controlling who she talked to, and keeping eyes on her every move. Suddenly, it wasn't just Cassie's word anymore. It was Justin Bieber confirming it. And that changed everything. Bieber's post went beyond just support. It was a full-on emotional gut punch. He admitted he always felt something was off, but at the time, he was just a confused kid caught in the whirlwind of fame.
Encounters, and I just want to protect her, I don't want her to go through anything I went through. I don't wish that upon anybody. Yeah, if she ever needs me, I'm just a call away.
Do you realize how important your story is? Every time I have a conversation with someone who's been through this unique type of experience, I'm searching for some kind of truth that can help.
I commend you for going there and asking the tough questions and the things that people don't want to talk about, and they don't want to go there because it's revealing, and I want people to take a look at my story, and hopefully my words can make.
There were moments I asked myself, is this normal? He wrote. But I was just a kid too. I thought this was how the industry worked. And then came the line that hit like a brick wall. If I had spoken up sooner, maybe she wouldn't have felt so alone. That one sentence, devastating. Inside the courtroom, chaos broke out, and the judge hadn't even stepped in yet. One legal assistant literally ran the printed post over to the prosecution. Whisper chains spread like wildfire. A juror quietly asked for water, trying to process what they just heard. A reporter sprinted out to call their editor. Lawyers were huddling behind open folders, whispering like they just got hit with a bombshell, because they had. Bieber's post didn't just shake the internet, it rattled the entire courtroom. Prosecutors suddenly had something more powerful than cross-examinations and exhibits, a credible global name confirming Cassie's experience. This wasn't some random blogger or anonymous source. This was Justin Bieber, a chart-topping A-list superstar who used to sit at Diddy's own table, now standing on the other side, publicly saying, I believe her. That changed everything. Security shifted around Diddy's table. One guard moved in closer. The tension in the room snapped into something sharper, electric, like everyone could feel the shift in real time. Diddy sat frozen. At first, just still. Then his legs started bouncing. His hand clenched the table so hard it turned white. His lawyers scrambled, trying to snap him back into focus, pushing a notepad in front of him, pointing at legal exhibits, whispering fast. But nothing worked. He'd already read it. Bieber's words were in his head now, and it looked like something in him broke. Observers said you could see it happening. Diddy's whole energy shifted. His breathing got heavier.
So Subramanian's order reads, quote, while the government objects to handing the videos over, they provide several options for a defendant to consider that would permit the defense to view the videos, access the information they're looking for, and even allow them to manipulate the videos.
He ran his hand through his hair, yanked at his tie, leaned in and whispered something sharp to his lawyer. And then, bam! Out of nowhere, his hand slammed the table, knocking over a glass of water. It shattered on the floor. The courtroom gasped in shock. The judge didn't hesitate. Her gavel cracked across the room. Mr. Combs, control yourself, she snapped. But Diddy was already on his feet. You know this is all lies, he shouted, pointing straight at Cassie. You know damn well that's not what happened. Then he swung toward the evidence screen and snapped, and him, after everything I did for him? The tension hit a new level. Security rushed forward. One lawyer tried to grab him and pull him back into his seat. Diddy shoved him off, hard. One of the guards unclipped something from his belt, just in case. The judge stood up herself, voice sharp and loud. Remove the jury, now. But while the jury was being escorted out, Diddy kept yelling, you're making this up. Loyalty means nothing anymore. And then it happened. The words that froze the entire room. I'll make sure he never works in this town again. Neither of them will. He was talking about Justin Bieber, out loud, in open court, in front of reporters. You could hear the air get sucked out of the room. Diddy had just publicly threatened a global superstar with dozens of witnesses. His own lawyer dropped his head into his hands like the case had just been torched on live TV. The prosecutor's jaw locked. She looked like she couldn't believe what she just witnessed. And the judge? Oh, she wasn't done yet, not even close. The judge rose from her bench, eyes locked on Diddy, and dropped the coldest line of the day. Mr. Combs, you do not control what happens in this courtroom. One more outburst, and you will be removed and held in contempt. Boom. That was it. The tone had changed for good. Security didn't budge from his side. One guard stood directly behind Diddy, another locked in at the courtroom door. The message was clear. They were done playing games. Diddy didn't say another word after that. But honestly, he didn't have to. The damage was already done. The image he had spent decades building, the untouchable mogul, the confident mentor, the man always in control, had just crumbled right in front of the jury. And now, they weren't looking at a powerful figure anymore. They were staring at a man losing it in real time. Once the chaos finally died down and the jury returned, the prosecution wasted no time. They brought Cassie Ventura back to the stand, and she walked in calm, composed, unshaken, like none of that courtroom chaos had even fazed her. But what she said next, it hit harder than Diddy's meltdown, because now everything started connecting, including Justin Bieber. Cassie took a breath, steady and strong. I know people are shocked by what Justin posted, she said, but I wasn't. And just like that, the entire courtroom leaned in. She explained how, during her years with Diddy, Bieber was constantly around. We were both young, she said. He was like a little brother to the industry. Diddy liked to show him off, bring him to events, teach him things. Then came the question everyone was waiting for. Did Justin Bieber ever witness anything unusual? Cassie didn't even blink. Yes. And with that one word, it all started to fall into place. Cassie didn't hold back. She said Justin saw more than he even realized, and way more than he was ready to process at the time. Then came the twist nobody expected. She revealed that Diddy kept a list of men she wasn't allowed to speak to unless he was present. And guess who was on that list? Justin Bieber. Don't smile too long, don't talk unless I'm nearby, Diddy would say. And if she did, there would be consequences later, she added, her voice steady but cold. That's when the prosecution dropped another bomb. They introduced text messages between Cassie and Bieber, dated 2017. That's years before any lawsuits or courtroom drama. The messages were short, simple, but once read out loud, they hit hard. Cassie, I don't know what to do anymore. He monitors everything. Bieber, that's not normal. You need to talk to someone. This isn't okay. The courtroom went silent. Jurors shifted in their seats. One woman wiped tears from under her glasses. Another leaned forward like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. These texts weren't just emotional, they were evidence. They proved that Cassie had confided in someone years ago. This wasn't a last-minute move for a payout. This was someone who'd been trapped for years, quietly asking for help. When the prosecutor asked why she never turned in those messages earlier, Cassie gave the most heartbreaking answer of the day. Because he told me no one would believe me, and I believed him. Then she told a story that locked the entire courtroom in place. She described being at an industry party, standing by the buffet, laughing with Justin. Nothing inappropriate, just two young stars having a moment. But when Diddy saw them, he pulled Cassie aside and whispered in her ear, "Even Justin knows what happens to people who cross me." And in that moment, the entire courtroom understood. This wasn't just about control, it was about fear. Fear that had been running the show for years. That quote dropped like a thunderclap. The whole courtroom froze. Cassie stared straight ahead, voice clear, unwavering, and repeated it word for word. "Even Justin knows what happens to people who cross me." Then came the line that crushed everyone listening. That was the first time I was truly afraid for Justin and for myself. The prosecution didn't follow up with more documents or exhibits. They ended her testimony with silence. And that silence, it hit harder than any stack of evidence. It said everything. Justin Bieber's post wasn't just trending anymore, it was officially on record. It had crossed into the courtroom and turned into evidence. And by that afternoon, day 5 had transformed into something way bigger than just Cassie versus Diddy. It had become a moment in history. Major news outlets weren't holding back. They were calling it the most significant celebrity courtroom showdown since Harvey Weinstein's fall. But here's the difference. This time, the world wasn't waiting for a verdict. They were watching it all fall apart in real time. As jurors sat there trying to digest Cassie's calm delivery, those chilling text messages from 2017, and Bieber's emotional confession, the media outside went wild. TMZ, Variety, Rolling Stone, CNN. They all dropped headlines within minutes. Bieber testimony validates Cassie's claims. 2017 texts shatter Diddy's defense. Diddy threatens Bieber in open court. But it wasn't just the press reacting. The music industry itself started shaking. Sources close to Bieber said his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Texts, calls, DMs nonstop. Artists, producers, execs. Some reached out to say thank you, others not so supportive. One message allegedly stood out the most. Short, cold, and straight up threatening. "You should have kept your mouth shut. You just opened the floodgates." That's what one message to Bieber said, and they weren't wrong. The moment he broke his silence, the dam burst. Former assistants, backup dancers, label interns, people who had been deep inside Diddy's empire for years, started reaching out to Cassie's legal team. Not all of them were ready to testify, but many were willing to file sworn affidavits. And they all shared the same thread: fear, silence, and now, validation. Even other celebrities started squirming. One clip from 2022 resurfaced, an old interview where Usher said he'd never let his kids live with Diddy. Back then, it got brushed off. Now, it went viral again, and fans saw it with fresh eyes.
You ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
Well, I mean, you try to get in contact with me, through all my, partners and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But you never really got my number, so. Correct. Okay. My number? Yeah. I'm gonna tell you my number. Yeah.
Timelines started getting pieced together. The internet began connecting the dots. People realized the industry might have known for years, and the loudest sound in all of it, that haunting silence. The silence that let it all happen. On social media, fans weren't playing nice. They started calling out every artist who had worked with Diddy, demanding statements, accountability, something. Some celebs issued quick statements trying to distance themselves. Others just quietly shut off their comments. But the pressure, it was on full blast now, because Bieber had done the one thing no one dared to do. He named names. He spoke out. Cassie's lawyers later confirmed that several artists had already reached out, quietly, off the record, asking to speak to prosecutors. Some had stories, others had receipts, audio, video. All of them were scared. Meanwhile, back in court, the prosecution looked composed, but they weren't finished because they were about to introduce something even heavier than messages, a video. And as the clock ticked into the final hour of day 5, they stood up and asked the judge for permission to present a newly authenticated piece of visual evidence.
It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, you know, telling me they love me and, you know, just turn their back on you in a second.
Everyone in that courtroom knew this wasn't over. It was about to get worse. The courtroom went silent as the judge gave a slow nod. The lights dimmed just slightly, and then the footage began. Only 40 seconds long, but it hit like a hammer. The screen showed grainy security footage from a luxury hotel lobby in LA, dated 2018. Cassie stood off to the side, talking casually with a male artist. Everything seemed normal until Diddy entered the frame. He didn't yell, he didn't cause a scene, he didn't have to. He walked straight up to her, wrapped his arm tightly around her waist, and leaned in to whisper something in her ear. Instantly, her expression changed. Her smile vanished. She nodded like she didn't have a choice. Then, without a word, he gently guided her away. It was subtle, too subtle, but also chilling, because it matched exactly what Cassie had described: the control, the silent pressure, the moments Bieber had said he saw too. When the lights came back on, Diddy wasn't looking at the judge. He wasn't looking at the jury. He was staring at the floor. Court was adjourned for the day, but out in the real world, the impact was already spreading like wildfire. By nightfall, brands were pulling endorsements. Streaming platforms quietly began reviewing his catalog. Business partners started having very serious behind-the-scenes conversations, and more people were coming forward, not just for Cassie, but for Justin Bieber too. This wasn't a clean victory. It was a heavy, exhausting day, but it meant everything. A source close to Bieber said, he didn't speak up to be a hero. He spoke up because he couldn't keep swallowing it anymore.
Can I say this? Lean into me again. You smell amazing. How old are you?
Thank you.
He had survived his own storm, and now he used his voice to help someone else walk through theirs. For Cassie, it was more than vindication. It was confirmation. Her story mattered. Someone who once stood at the top of the world saw it, believed her, and stood beside her. And for Diddy, that moment, that 40-second clip, might have marked the beginning of the end. What happens next? We'll have to wait and see. But after day 5, one thing is crystal clear. The silence that protected the powerful for so long is gone, and it might never come back. If you found this powerful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to hear the truth, and tap that bell so you never miss the next drop. See you in the next one.